Bishop Alistair, it's been a big theme of your academic research, the context, the culture in which the Christian gospel needs to be proclaimed. Can you just tell us about some of your concerns at the present time?
Well, I think some of the features of the culture we're in follow on from the Enlightenment, really. This great trust and confidence in human beings, our ability to think, to reason, to plan, to manage human life. And management is a great way of approaching life, in the West at least, at the moment. And that's linked, I think, in our present culture with a great emphasis upon the importance of the individual, human rights and toleration. Now, all those things are very important, and they're all fruits of the Christian gospel in a sense. But what we've lost in our culture, I think, is a sense of the counterweight, which is a nervousness about the reality of human sin and the need to take that seriously, and therefore our ability to think and reason will always be falling short of what we need to deliver. And instead of being frustrated and somebody coming on the radio when there's a disaster and saying this will never happen again, we need to recognise things do go wrong. Very often it's because of our inability to understand, to work together, to deliver. And the way of engaging with that isn't simply through better leadership or management, it's through what I would call a spiritual humility, a willingness to engage in the whole arena of forgiveness. And what does that mean? How do you make a new start? How do you don't just keep building on what you think you're doing, but sometimes have the courage to let things be knocked down? Go on.
Yeah, but some of your Episcopal colleagues, the Bishop of London, for instance, has said many times that the churches have been slow at coming forward. We found it hard to find the right language to express, for instance, human sin in our particular context. It doesn't translate very easily into a kind of digital age.
I think that's true, and often the liturgy that holds us together is in language that doesn't really meet with the way the modern world speaks and thinks. But actually the reality of sin is powerful. And much of the news is about things going wrong and people struggling to deal with it. And when there's a mega thing going wrong, the leadership is often saying, our hopes and prayers are with.
You talk in one of your earlier books about this notion of secular human liberalism. Can you unpack that a little bit? What do you really mean by that? Something which the media collude with, you say?
Well, I think it's this overconfidence that the secular, this world, humanism, human resources can deal with what this world is about. Actually, in human hearts, whether it's people trying to fall in love, pursue relationships, do things in the community, have visions about peace and justice in the world, there's something in the human heart that's much bigger than anything we can manage or organise, and is reaching out with imagination and hope against the evidence, really. And one of my great themes is we've got to learn to help people hope against the evidence. The modern world runs according to the evidence. Actually, human life is richer than what we can see, what we can measure, what we can design. And the church has got a vital role to help people have some confidence about recapturing that, running with it, accessing it. We're not going to do it through our traditional liturgies, except for the people who come and engage with those in a creative way. And what the world is really looking for is what I call prophetic leadership. We tend to do contextual leadership. We collude with the world. We say, what's going on? How can it be improved? Let's have a 5-year plan. We do mission action plans in our own diocese. What's missing is the prophetic leadership that actually says a whole lot of things we're perhaps not even looking at in the right way. And one of the things the gospel says is because we're not talking to the right people. Some folks are excluded from this. We're not listening to that perspective, particularly the poor, the marginalised, the suffering.
But is the church not saying loud enough? Because you say we're colluding with this. This is not the right way. I mean, shouldn't the church be more vociferous in finding a kind of different voice to express the alternative?
I think we should. I think that's what I mean by prophetic leadership. I'm a member of the House of Bishops, and one of the issues we face is that we get drawn into managing the church, managing decline or fighting decline, whatever it is. We have got a lot to learn, and therefore model to the church, about how do we read the signs of the times through a different lens, a gospel lens, hope against the evidence. And how do we then present something that's focused and united and clear in the public space, rather than all our own little ideas, which just confuse people?
It was quite brave of you to use the phrase sofa messiah in the context of all these different voices. Who are the sofa messiahs in the Redfern creed or the Redfern understanding of culture?
Well, the most obvious target, but I don't want to make them the only target, are politicians who sit on Andrew Marr's sofa and say, we'll sort that, and we'll sort that, and I'm the Messiah, believe in me. And the media does help us think, if we invest in one person, they will take us through. Politics has lost the rich tapestry of trade unions, local groups, all the people who contributed to a vision and its realism and recognition of the problems to face. We now have slick people with slick answers who know they can't deliver, and they don't. And yet that's what we're fed with. But it happens all the time. That's how people present themselves as celebrities. You know, I'm the best at that. I'm the best at that. Vote for me. Chuck everybody else off the programme. There's this very superficial approach to life that some people can do it, and we must emulate those simple ways of doing it. Life is very complicated.
Yes, Stanley Grenz has said that it's too late to do anything about the past. In fact, it's almost too late to do anything about the present, but we need to think about the future. And again, in your book, you say Christians need to reclaim the debate. How are we practical? I mean, the rhetoric's good, but how do we actually do that? How do the bishops do that? How do the laity and the clergy do that? How does the Christian gospel find a voice so that it's heard again?
Well, I think it's interesting what you say about the past and the future. Contextual theology draws us into the present, which we try and manage. Otherwise, we try to look to the future, and everybody's trying to do that, safeguard the planet. Very important agenda. The Christian gospel is rooted in remembrance. Do this in remembrance of me. Wash some people's feet. Share some food together and be a community. Do this in remembrance. The church needs to remember more clearly and more radically what it has been made to be and how it's operated in the past more successfully, I think, than we're doing. We've got to hold our nerve on that. Stuart Headlam, the colourful 19th century priest who was a promoter of music halls and all the kind of things that posh people in the church didn't really approve of, used to say that baptism makes every baptised person a communist, because we're all equal radically. That has a political content that is explosive. The Eucharist is the Mass for anybody who wants to turn up and share in a family meal, and anybody can come. Now that is politically explosive when everything else is graded. You've got to earn your stripes, gain entrance, keep up performances. We've got to reclaim some of that. We have a past that's rich in resources, in stories, in examples. One of my fears is that if we just locked into the present and a starry future, which is what the world is, we come out of an event that happened, a death and a resurrection. We come out of a past that shapes present and future.
So you would agree finally with Shane Hipps, who says that the churches can be, if they get their priorities right, once again the architects. They can draw back the curtain and begin to draw a future which is actually of the gospel. You believe that?
I do, and I think you've used two very interesting contrasting things. Drawing back the curtain is what we're about: revelation, discovery, uncovering what's there, because we know how to read it through what God has done through Christ in the past and some of the models of church that have been inspiring. Architecture is too often, again, futuristic. We have an architecture, the household of God, for instance, many mansions, all kinds of access. We have an architecture that we ought to, I think, explore more deeply and more richly, that we've inherited. Lots of mistakes, but we're people who learn from mistakes by reflection. So I'd want to endorse the idea of drawing back the veil. That's where the spiritual begins to inform the political, the social, the economic, the deeper currents in people's hearts, hope beyond the evidence, all those kind of things.